right, hello, good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're joining from. Welcome to this conversation with Maria Ressa. It's Holding the Line for Press Freedom and Democracy. Before we begin, I wanted to say a few words first about why we're doing this topic. We really are incredibly fortunate to have Maria Ressa here with Steven Butler on the critical topic of press freedom and democracy. As with so many areas, technology and social media have really put this topic on steroids through its sheer speed and reach. And it's been forcing upholders of democracy and its critical pillar of a free press to reckon with an insidiously powerful foe that is really being wielded by some world leaders with great effectiveness. And one such leader is Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines, and Maria Ressa and her media outlet Rappler, as many of you probably well know, in their quest to tell some of the stories in the Philippines, particularly the war on drugs, have really become a thorn in Duterte's side. And this struggle for information is a story, it really doesn't start and end in the Philippines. It doesn't start and end here in the US with the 2016 presidential elections, but it's rather one that continues to unfold. And I think Rissa's role in the story is a really critical one as we all try to understand this new world that we're in. So I'm so pleased that we have both Maria and Steven with us tonight. As background, my name is Courtney Dogger, and I'm the president of Network 2020. For those of you who don't know, Network 2020 is a New York-based nonprofit. We're really focused on bridging the gap between the private sector and the foreign policy worlds. And so part of our programs, we have a number of them, but we also do a lot of talks like these on issues around the world. I'll stop there, and I'm going to turn it over to Greg Pfeiffer of the Institute of Current World Affairs, with whom we are partnering on this briefing tonight. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you so much, Courtney. As Courtney said, I'm Gregory Pfeiffer, the Executive Director of the Institute of Current World Affairs, and we are so glad to partner again with Network 2020. Before introducing our speakers, I'd like to say just a few words about the Institute of Current World Affairs, because ICWA has been closely tied to journalism from our founding in the 1920s. During World War I, President Woodrow Wilson appointed the Institute's first executive director to establish a new telegraph news service. Walter Rogers was a former newspaperman, and he understood that good foreign reporting required correspondents with expertise in their countries. So ICWA was established to train a cadre of experts in cultures around the world. 96 years on, our alumni include a host of distinguished international reporters. They include our moderator tonight, Steven Butler, who was an ICWA Fellow in Korea from 1983 to 1986. He went on to a stellar career as a journalist throughout Asia for the Financial Times, the Christian Science Monitor, and US News and World Report. He later served as a foreign editor at Knight Ritter's Washington Bureau. Currently, he is Asia Program Coordinator for the Committee to Protect Journalists and works tirelessly for press freedom, including with Maria Ressa. Maria is a former CNN bureau chief in Manila and Jakarta, and now executive editor and CEO of Rappler, one of the Philippines' first multimedia news sites. And she recently produced a documentary called 1,000 Cuts. One of the world's leading press freedom advocates, Ressa has won too many awards and honors to list here, so I'll just mention a few of them. One of Time magazine's most influential women of the century. One of the BBC's 100 most inspiring and influential women of 2019. And Prospect magazine's world's top 50 thinkers. Among the many awards she has won just last year was the National Press Club's International John Aubuchon Press Freedom Award. With that, I will hand off to Steve.
You forgot the most important award, which was the Gwen Ifill Award from the Committee to Protect Journalists. Actually, there are many important awards. I first became aware of Maria when I lived in Japan in the 1990s, and she was a correspondent for CNN in Southeast Asia. And in 2004, she returned to the Philippines and became news director at the television network ABSCBN. which was the largest news broadcaster in the Philippines. And unfortunately, it's a past tense because last year they were forced off the air following some comments by the president saying that's what he wanted done. He denies responsibility, but obviously it came from the presidential palace. She founded Rappler in 2012, and it's the news site has become famous for its investigative reporting, but it also covers sports and entertainment. It's a general site, and despite the continuing attacks on it, it's very popular. It's a very widely visited site, and I think what distinguishes it overall is the very high quality of the journalism that's there. I met Maria first about 4 years ago at our offices in New York when she came with a lot of printouts illustrating the kinds of visceral attacks online attacks against her and Rappler. And it was remarkable to see it because the kind of analysis they did was able to show very clearly that people affiliated with the president were likely responsible for it. Of course, you can never prove it, but this seems to be what happened. In many ways, Maria is the person of the hour globally at the edge of the crisis that we are all facing over technology, information, and democracy. And I'd like to start by letting Maria talk about the kind of changes she's seen in the Philippines through this period, from ABSCBN to the period at Rappler, and how Rappler and journalism have been affected by the political and technological changes.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. So first of all, thank you so much for listening and for helping us shine the light, which is frankly the only weapon we have to defend ourselves, the only way we have to defend ourselves. I love that we are at the intersection between private sector and policy, because that is the biggest problem right now. E.O. Wilson, the American biologist, said, the crisis is about our Paleolithic emotions, our medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And that's kind of what Steve had mentioned, what we did in Rappler, because before Rappler, I focused on terrorism. I mean, when I was at CNN, I looked at how the virulent ideology of terrorism spreads. First, link analysis, then social networks. Social networks is a hop, skip, and a jump to social media, right? More virulent spread. To answer your question, in less than 2 years, I've had to post bail 10 times in order to be free. So I have 10 criminal charges. Even though Rappler doesn't have a head of legal, we have Amal Clooney, who on Christmas Eve 2 years ago wrote me an email to say that I could go to jail for up to 63 years at that point. Now it's more than 100 years. My 9th arrest warrant was November last year. My 10th was January this year, right? It just keeps coming. I think it's part of the pollution. It's part of what doing journalism today means. I mean, I think the Philippines is an extreme. There are countries that are worse. There are journalists in the Philippines who have already been arrested and detained unjustly. We have a senator Senator Laila de Lima, who investigated Duterte for extrajudicial killings. She's a first-term senator, former justice secretary. She's been in prison for more than 4 years now. It's a huge question from Duterte from May 2016, which is when I think globally the dominoes fell because of the shift in our information ecosystem, because news organizations lost our gatekeeping powers to technology. Social media platforms became the world's largest, they deliver the news. Facebook is the world's largest delivery platform for news. And yet those very same platforms by design are biased against facts. All the studies have already shown this. There have been so many, including ours, which is part of what Steve mentioned, but lies laced with anger and hate spread faster and further than facts. Science Magazine, 2018 article, I'll share it in the box. So if that's the foundation, if you don't have facts, you can't have truth, you can't have trust. When you don't have facts, truth, and trust, you can't have democracy. You can't have any meaningful human endeavor. Geopolitical power shifts come out of this, right? Because the way you solve the coronavirus is by the best minds from different parts of the world coming together to look at the problem. But what if you don't have a shared set of facts? What if you don't have a shared reality? That's the world we live in today. And here in the Philippines, we saw from Duterte's election in 2016, just, I think the difference between us and you are the killings, the impunity. In 2016, I called out the impunity of Duterte's drug war and Zuckerberg's Facebook. They were hand in hand because they work hand in hand. Influence operations or information operations bottom up, seed the meta narratives that then are repeated by power top down. And, in my case, it's journalist equals criminal in 2016, when at that point I laughed about it. That was seeded by the government and pro-government accounts. I laughed about it because I thought, oh, my track record is there. By February this year, I'll have been a journalist for 35 years. So I'm old. Duterte turned me grayer. But 2017, top down, President Duterte himself repeated the same message in his State of the Nation address. So think about social media as fertilizer, then top down, President Duterte. A week later, I get my first subpoena. So 2018, I get 11 cases filed against me in Rappler. In 2019, the arrest warrants come. I remember a 5-week period. My first arrest was February 13th. I know because they detained me overnight and I was released on bail for the first time on Valentine's Day, 2019. I posted bail 8 times in less than 3 months to stay free. In order to travel, I had to get permission 36 times from 2018 until the lockdown last year. 2019, the cases began. And then 2020, I was convicted mid-June for the cyber-libel case. It's a cyber-libel case that was pushed for a story we did 8 years earlier. And it's a story I didn't write, edit, or supervise. I allegedly violated a law that didn't exist at the time that the story was published. So this is my Kafkaesque world. I think the last thing I'll say, Steve, is this one is me. I'm now used to being the case study. I'm used to feeling like Cassandra and Sisyphus rolled into one. Oh, for CPJ, a few years back, I wrote, how our dystopian present is your dystopian future. Let me take it there. What you went through January 6th, so not a surprise. It is the logical extension of what we have seen. And the same methodology that was used here in the Philippines is what's happened to you, because Cambridge Analytica whistleblower Chris Wiley said that the Philippines is a petri dish. Cambridge Analytica and its parent company SCL tested tactics of mass manipulation here. If it worked here, then they ported it to you. So you're really the target. We were just the guinea pigs. So in the US on January 6th, that message of election fraud, and this is work by the Election Integrity Partnership, it was seeded a year earlier in August 2019. And not surprisingly, it was seeded on social media by RT. And then it was picked up by Steve Bannon on YouTube, seeded on closed Facebook pages, dropped by QAnon. Well, it was Tucker Carlson in August 2020 that brought it mainstream. Then QAnon dropped, and then President Trump came top down with election fraud. This goes hand in hand, right? So, sorry, I got derailed by the meta narratives and how they're seeded. I guess the last part is violence. And this is important because, let me close the legal and then I'll go to the violence, the legal part. This week alone. So last week, I testified for the first time in 5 tax evasion charges. Actually, this one was 4. And in order to charge us with tax evasion, the government shifted Rappler Holdings, our holding company, from a company that's run by journalists to, quote, a dealer in securities. We essentially became a stock brokerage agency. And so the government came after us for taxes for a stock brokerage agency, which we shouldn't have to pay. We did pay the appropriate taxes. So I testified for the first time in that last week. This week, I have 2 filings. I filed one yesterday for, which one is this for? I have 3 cyber libel cases. So the first one, you already know, I got convicted. We're appealing that in court. The second one is for a tweet. I screen grabbed a newspaper article, a tweet, and tweeted it. I have a criminal charge for that. Imagine. And then the third is what I will be arraigned for on Thursday. So I'm showing up in court along with our reporter who wrote a fantastic piece we are standing behind about corruption again. We may or may not get arraigned on Thursday, but I've had 2 legal filings this week plus an arraignment. I say I spend 80% of my time with our lawyers. And the last one is violence. On Sunday, so the violence hasn't stopped. Human rights groups, CPJ, Amnesty International puts the number of people dead in the Philippines in the first since 2016 at 30,000. The Philippine police admit to about 8,000. Regardless of the scale, even 8,000 is atrocious, right? So that's the number of people killed in the drug war. Just last Sunday, 9 activists were killed. 9. And yesterday, our lawyers, there is an anti-terror law that seems to be fashioned after Hong Kong's security law. Under this law that was passed last year, signed by the president, anyone can be designated a terrorist. And if they are, then you can be arrested without a warrant and jailed for up to 24 days. There are 37 petitions at the Supreme Court to demand this law be declared unconstitutional. Well, I signed one of those petitions, but yesterday, our lawyers, along with other lawyers in the 37 petitions, asked us to hold a press conference because they had received death threats, because one of the lawyers had been attacked, because they are afraid. At least 56 lawyers, judges have been killed in the Philippines under this time period, right? So you got to figure out. I guess the last thing is, it's death by 1,000 cuts. All of our democracies around the world have become significantly weaker because the information ecosystem shifted dramatically with technology. There are no gatekeeping powers. We don't have shared facts. So these cheap armies on social media have been eroding democracy, and the first studies came out as early as 2016 and 2017. The United States has felt it. The last study by Oxford University's Computational Propaganda Research Project said that it's happening in at least 81 countries around the world. So I guess I'll shut up. You only asked one question. I talked for a long time. It's like a torrent. We have
Let me
to
ask you something. I mean, I look at Rappler, and frankly, it's amazing the kind of journalism you do. But ABSCBN, their broadcasts are shut down. What's happened to the rest? When I used to work in the Philippines, there was a kind of a lively, flawed democracy, but also a very lively, press. Wasn't always the most professional sort of standards, but nonetheless, people really got out there and worked on stories and reported. What's happened to that scene now?
It's so different. It's night and day different. There are costs to doing these stories. I actually feel my job today is not so much a journalist, but to hold up the sky so our journalists can do their jobs. And I think, let me look at it as plus and minus. Positives are that the sense of mission of journalism is really, really strong in our journalists and in Rappler. But the flip side is, it's a war of attrition. I spend 80% to 90% of my time with lawyers. You had helped us also in terms of putting, our legal fees have grown exponentially. We spend sometimes an average of $40,000 a month, for a small group of 100 people. So Rappler is about 100 people. Our median age is 23 years old. We're very young, but 23 is the median age of the Philippines. and we are 63% women. We were the first to call out what was happening on social media because we live on social media, right? Rappler couldn't have grown as fast as it did, both in reach and revenue, if we weren't on social media. So I guess you can say I drank the Kool-Aid. I believed in its enabling powers, and I watched how the incentive scheme, the business model of social media, turned it into a behavior modification system that now, frankly, requires regulations, real guardrails to protect facts and to protect the public sphere. Sorry, I didn't really answer your question. So the last one I'll say is that we're a cautionary tale. We stood up. The government tried to shut us down January 2018 by revoking our license without even really consulting our lawyers. Our Chai Hokudenya and I just got in front of the media and said this is ridiculous and fought. That is the best strategy. ABSCBN was targeted. So we were the third targeted in the Philippines. The first was the largest newspaper, Philippine Daily Inquirer. In President Duterte's first State of the Nation address, he does this every time. It's a very good intimidating tactic when you are the most powerful person in the country. Largest newspaper. Second was ABS-CBN, the largest broadcaster. We were a really puny little tiny group compared. ABS-CBN, I used to manage 1,000 journalists. In Rappler, we have 100 total, right? So I think there's great fear. There is a search for how to define journalism, how to keep doing journalism, but at the same time, the business of journalism, the big companies understand the implicit message. You push too far, you push too hard, the consequences are real. So there's that. And then, of course, then you add that journalists are getting killed and jailed, right? Just this week, the editor-in-chief of the Manila Daily, IC Salem, her real name is Lady Anne Salem, IC Salem. She's like in her 20s. She was arrested December 10th, and a court actually more than a month ago said that arrest warrant was ridiculous, threw it out, and yet she still stayed in jail for another month. She was just released this week. So there's that. And there's another journalist, a young woman named Frenchie May Cumpio, who's been in jail since February last year. She's still in jail. And I constantly ask, where do we get a sense of justice? Where do these journalists, like IC Salem, she lost months of her life for doing her job. Planted evidence in her apartment, so how do you deal with this? We're figuring out as we go along.
Yeah, let me ask you to expand a little bit on something you raised, which is regulation of social media. I know you've taken your case directly to Facebook. This is a really controversial topic in this country where there's talk of altering the kind of impunity that has been given to the social media companies so that they have some responsibility. Where do you come down in this debate? Because frankly, I don't want Facebook running my life. I also don't want the government running my life. So what's left?
Well, so, I'm part of the real Facebook oversight board that Carol Cadwallader and Shoshana Zuboff had put together. We put pressure. I am also simultaneously, I run an organization. Rappler is a Facebook fact-checking partner in the Philippines. We're one of 2 Filipino fact-checking partners, right? So, and as you know, I work closely with Facebook because we must. I knew Facebook better than Facebook did in the Philippines before they opened their sales team here, right? So, number one, the ban on Trump shouldn't have had to happen if they had the appropriate guardrails in place. The only reason they had to ban was because they were so permissive. They allowed it. They abdicated responsibility. Inciting to violence is never something. It's not part of free speech. This is not a free speech issue. And I'm going to quote a comedian, Sacha Baron Cohen, who told the Anti-Defamation League a few years ago, this is not a free speech issue. It is a freedom of reach right? It's the amplification of it. It's the putting together of folks who are prone. We know they're prone to conspiracy theories coming together in QAnon. All of these weirdnesses, by the way, have some connection to the Philippines. That's another weird thing. But so where do I stand on this? This is not a free speech issue. This is, I demand accountability and have demanded accountability from Facebook since 2016. They have allowed illegal activities, illegal in the real world. They've stripped the protection of a journalist that is in the Bill of Rights in the United States and in the Philippines. The Philippine Constitution is patterned after the United States. They made it far more dangerous to be a journalist. It's not just Facebook, it's social media in general, and I'll explain why. Because by design, social media platforms, because they focused on growth, gosh, I wish news organizations could have used that same strategy. We just have conscience and we understand the impact on the public sphere. But what the social media platforms did is to print money at massive cost to society. So think about it like this. I'm going to take one tech decision and show you the impact on the Philippines, by extension, the United States and any other democracy you're listening from, right? The way platforms grow, the way they push you to grow your social media network, and the way they grow their platforms, right? So growth is everything. The way they do that is by using an algorithm that they have tested and they know it works, which is in order to, the recommendation algorithm to get you to grow your network is to use friends of friends. I'm writing a chapter in a draft now where the title is How Friends of Friends Kill Democracy. So this friends of friends. So here in the Philippines, here's what happened when Duterte was elected in 2016. All the news groups pretty much agreed on facts. We don't have a Fox and CNN, right? We have news groups, pretty mainstream. We agreed on facts and they were in the center. But after President Duterte was elected, he fomented, a very polarized, you're with me or against me. Those types of leaders do best in this. President Trump did the same thing, with me or against me. After he was elected in 2016, friends of friends, if you're pro Duterte and you grow your Facebook, your YouTube, your Twitter, you move further right. If you're anti-Duterte and you're standing up against him, you begin to move further left as you grow the networks. Over time, this division, this schism grows. That's by design, right? Friends of friends. So that one decision to do that, that is how articles, facts are being recommended to you. And then beyond that, once you are here, part of what pushes you is not just a recommendation engine of who you friend or who you bring into your network, but it is also the recommendation engine of what articles are recommended to you or what content. Let's put them all as content, right? And there's been a lot of studies done about this now, a lot on YouTube. If you click on a 9/11 conspiracy theory on YouTube, you watch it, the next video that will be recommended to you will take you further down the rabbit hole. It will be more. And so here's a great study that was done, and I believe it was on Twitter. Rene DeResta showed you how moms, do-it-yourself moms, have this group. So I guess this may be Facebook. You can Google and check it, but she did the study. So she took these do-it-yourself moms and looked at what was being recommended to them. Do-it-yourself moms, because they do it yourself, all of a sudden they were getting recommendations for anti-vaxxers, groups of anti-vaxxers. If you take that recommendation and click it, the next recommendation you get is QAnon. So not only is it divisive, it is also radicalizing. That's the distribution platform for news today, right? So, and then here's the last part and why it is so dangerous and why groups like yours should look at this and think about it. And I'll tell you how to think about it. The last part is that all data is good. This is in Shoshana Zuboff's book, surveillance capitalism, the business model of it, right? If all data is good, meaning lies and facts are the same, right? This is how we build professional news groups. We keep the lies out from the public sphere. But here, this is these platforms actually spread the lies faster and further than the facts. So if you treat all of that as data, then you don't distinguish between lies and facts. And that is by design. And so you can actually say that our delivery platforms for news today are biased against facts and they're biased against journalists. So this is the last thing I'll say on this is I think about it now, and I've started saying this as early as 2017, I think. Think about it like an atom bomb has gone off, right? So it's 76th year of the anniversary against Hiroshima this year. But what happened when that happened? An atom bomb has gone off in our information ecosystem. When that happened in the real world 76 years ago, the entire world came together. We saw the horribleness of what we can do to each other. And we said, we are going to need to protect humanity from the worst of what humanity can do. And we created Bretton Woods, NATO, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the Philippines is one of the first signatories to, right? That's what needs to happen today in our information ecosystem because it is that bad. I'm going to put in a link to a study that was just done by the International Center for Journalists this week. It was released this week, Monday. And we did it as a collaborative partnership with them. We analyzed the Facebook data. Julie Passetti then came out and showed you what this looks like. I'm only one case study. This is happening to journalists all around the world. And it is also in the Philippines, our data shows women are being attacked at least 10 times more than men. I'm sorry, one question, spurs this torrent. There is so much. I guess, I don't want to leave you thinking like atom bomb, oh my God, we're all going. The good part, there's a good part. There's a good part. It's creative destruction. And so, for Courtney and Gregory, I think this is the time when all your best minds need to come on board. We need to collaborate. It's a global problem. And I look at the news agenda of Rappler, our three biggest global problems. The first time we looked at it at global solutions was climate change, because we have an average of 20 typhoons every year in the Philippines. The second is the battle for truth, for facts. The third is coronavirus. Without facts, we can't solve any of these things. Anyway, I'll shut up. I'm sorry, Steve. Too much coffee this morning.
I want to ask just answer this one quickly, but then we can go to some of the questions had. But I've been to your offices. I've got to know some of your staff, some of your senior staff, and they're amazing. Actually, just amazing people. And how do you keep it going? I mean, I know you have this core of really talented and committed people, but are they able to keep attracting people to come in and do the work?
Yes.
Okay.
Which one is that? I'm going to say it's the first love that like attracts like, and in many ways, the friction of running a news group is gone because the mission drives everyone, and so, for example, Rambo Talabong, who's been a journalist only for 3 years, he just got his first arrest warrant with me because he wrote a fantastic story on corruption. He's good, he's strong, he's courageous. He's in the film. Oh, the film was not done by Rappler. It is about Rappler, but it was done by Frontline has it now, but Ramona Diaz and a whole group of folks actually came and they followed us and I think saw this. So sorry, you told me short. So the short answer is it's a driving force. And I think, this is also the other challenge for news groups is that this isn't one of those times where we can hide behind the brand, hide behind a news organization. As a journalist today, you're exposed, and our journalists are aware of that. They're quick thinking. We put in place workflows for worst case scenarios and we drill them. And so I'm not alone. I guess that's the last part. And you mentioned, I have my three co-founders are women. We are all in our 50s, and our Rambo is like, what, he's not even 25, I think, right? So that's the gap. But these the co-founders are, I mean, it's like sometimes in crisis we're running in four different directions, but we're aligned strategically, we're aligned in our values, so we get things done 4 times quicker.
Okay, let me go through some of these questions. Say, do you have a plan B to work abroad if it becomes too dangerous for you to work in the Philippines?
This is a question I'm asked a lot, like, why, especially, actually after the CPJ award, we thought I would be arrested when I came home. This was in 2018. I wasn't, but, that was the first time, because the government, while I was getting the award, came out with a press release on one of the other charges. The baton was passed to me at a time, passed in the sense that I'm a senior news leader, right? So what I do matters. It sends a signal, not just to journalists, not just to Rappler, but to journalists in the Philippines, to Duterte administration, to Filipinos. And it's such a fragile moment that, no, I guess the short answer right now is I can't think about that, because whether I go to jail will depend on how well I fight the battle today. If I fight it well, then it means we preserve democracy. Is that,
It's big,
right?
It's big.
Like, it's just the stakes are so high,
Yeah.
and the costs are personal, and I'm okay with it.
It's not just, it's democracy, it's the rule of law. They all go together, and press freedom is absolutely at the foundation of it. Okay, here's another one. How did Trump's characterization of the US media as the enemy affect Duterte and the Philippines?
They riffed off each other. When President Trump called CNN fake news, a week later, Duterte called Rappler fake news. So thank you. It goes both ways. And I think President Trump, when he was president, I think he would have liked to have done some of the things Duterte did. It's just, you have stronger institutions. I think those are the differences, right? Our institutions crumbled within 6 months. Yours stayed strong enough, but you escaped by the skin of your teeth, barely. And we have presidential elections again, May 2022, and we won't have the same kind of focus and the concerted effort of the social media platforms to protect the vote. So I'm worried about that. Frankly, I'm worried about all the different countries around the world. Myanmar had its elections, right? And actually, I will say Facebook pulled out the stops for the first time. They just zoomed in on Myanmar to try to keep the elections free and fair. And I think they did succeed, but then look what happened, right? A coup has happened. And this is what happens when it's death by 1,000 cuts. Enabling the online violence leads to real world violence. Enabling the attacks on facts weakens the facts. Sorry, now I'm going to get emotional. Okay, take it for a second while I drink.
Okay, here's another question. It's a bit more elaborate. So when it comes to other countries with struggling movements for human rights and press freedom, such as Turkey and Russia, how can the Western world provide a helping hand in spreading the message of journalists such as yourself within and beyond their respective countries? Should the West involve itself in these affairs, or will it detract from the valuable work that people like you are doing? If fear and censorship of the public is their strongest weapon, what's the best antidote?
So offhand, I say values. Stand up for your values. And in my case, and I can only speak from mine, although I believe Russia and Turkey, they're the exact same thing. You need to, and I say Americans, Western democracies. If you do believe in the values you say you do, and we all understand real politics. I understand that the Philippines is a proxy war between the United States and China, right? I understand these things, but how well do you live by your values? I think that part of the reason I can speak as frankly as I do is because I am a dual citizen. Um, oops, no, and I feel like part of the way Rappler can continue doing our jobs is because news organizations have helped us shine the light. There is a coalition, hashtag Hold the Line coalition, that you're part of. Thank you, Steve, CPJ, RSF, and ICFJ.
70 organizations.
More than now. I'm keeping track of all, more than 80. So, it's like that's what gives us the ability, like power has to think twice. We're a little bug that can be squashed. Hopefully not, but you help us stand up. So if you don't stand by your values, and this is now to governments, I think it was a little bit atrocious that it took until 2019, July 2019, for the Global Media Freedom Coalition for governments to start speaking. Individual governments did, and I actually point to Canada. Canada's been incredible in terms of this, but I look forward to the United States actually regaining its voice and finding its values and living up to it.
It's interesting because it used to be the theory that the United States was a democracy and we would be safer and more secure in a world where there are many other democracies. And somehow I think that lesson was forgotten, or many people forgot about the democratic values in the United States. But I think what you're saying is absolutely right, that we are committed to working with a lot of other organizations, not just for Rappler, but I mean, right now there's a terrible emergency in Afghanistan, and we have at least a dozen other organizations we're working with to try to help journalists there, help keep them safe, help bring them to safety if we need to. But there's tremendous power in numbers. We can't do it all by ourselves.
The world is blowing up, right? I mean, it really is. And you can see this in all of the reports. I mean, can I just say, the fact that the United States finally released the details, not enough on the Khashoggi report. We've known this for a long time. The fact that I guess I still remember former President Trump's quote about this, right? It was basically, we give up our values because of money. These are not statements you would expect from the United States. Yes, please be pragmatic, but values have to mean something. And frankly, they lead to meaning. So, both at a micro level and at a macro level, that's the struggle. The struggle is for meaning. And I think that both what social media has done is it's atomized meaning to meaninglessness. So it has made the micro, each of our individual search for meaning, harder. And at the same time, governments, the United States losing its way, that's had ripple effects all around the world.
Okay, here's another question. What are the most efficient sanctions against those who thwart freedom of the press and against those who endanger the life of journalists? Is it travel bans, freezing assets, persona non grata, or do sanctions work at all? And how far up the chain of command should such sanctions apply?
Personalized sanctions, the Magnitsky. So let me qualify what I also said about the Trump administration. There was still legislation passed that was helpful to people like Laila de Lima, who's been in prison for more than 4 years, right? Last year, so December last year, President Trump signed into law as part of the Appropriations Act, a clause that gives the Secretary of State the ability to take away the visa of any official and their family. That's a good thing. Any official and their family. So any official who harasses, intimidates, or attacks journalists. And they mentioned us. So they mentioned me and El Faro. The year before that, the Appropriations Act, and the usual suspects in the Senate and the House of Representatives pushed this through. There have been 5 legislators that have been declared persona non grata by the Duterte administration because they keep doing this. So, as a blanket, I got to qualify what I had said earlier. The year before that, they focused on Laila de Lima because she's had it worse. So I guess let me answer your question directly. Remind me what the question was.
Basically, it's how high up the sanctions should go, and
Oh, yeah.
are sanctions an effective weapon in these cases?
So the Magnitsky Act, which has now been adopted by the EU, the United States has it. And I'll talk here more about Amal Clooney, Keelan Gallagher. I am very blessed because I have Covington is doing work for us pro bono, right? Like I am just so. That's the other part, the generosity of people. People come. See, that's what's gonna make me emotional. Oh boy. The personalized, targeted sanctions, because you don't want to penalize a whole nation. Most of them are living under fear. They work.
Okay. Here's a question. You mentioned a 2016 study on the negative effects of technology on democracy. Would you be able to point the students among us to directions to the paper author or department, or where it should?
Yeah, I'm gonna just Google it and put it in the chain right now.
Okay.
There's a great book that was just published September last year. It's by Sinan Aral. It's called The Hype Machine. But this is an article that he and I believe Deb Roy from MIT. Deb was the former CTO of Twitter. So this was a study they did on Twitter that showed you how lies spread faster and further. The 2016 study was done by Rappler. This was, how do I get the courage to actually call out Duterte and Facebook? I mean, it's not because I pulled it out of thin air or I felt it. It was because the data showed it to us. The first 2 weeks. So after we did a propaganda war series, which we published in 2016, as soon as we published this 3-part series, I was inundated with an average of 90 hate messages per hour. And when that happened, I actually tried to respond to it because I embraced social media and they weren't listening. And I realized the goal was to pound me to silence. So it's 2 things. It does 2 things. It creates a bandwagon effect to make everyone else on social media believe it. It works. And then the second is to pound the target to silence. It took me 2 weeks because I thought, oh my God, I actually went back over all of our data. I went back over the articles because I wrote 2 of the 3-part series on weaponizing the internet. The 3rd part was written by another co-founder, Chai Hofilenya, right? So I looked it all over. I tested it. I looked. They silenced me for 2 weeks. And then I began to gather data. And that's when I realized, oh my God. And that's when I began shouting. But, it was too early. I think the first time I really said this was at the Google News Lab in December of 2016 in America, where I just said, guys, look at what's happening here. Here's the data. This is what you are going to face. And then I went to talk to everyone who would listen. So think about it, like I'm the intersection of 3 things. I run a news organization. I run the business and the tech parts of it specifically. So those 2. And then I'm a target. So those 3 things gave me an idea. I was able to go micro and macro. So we could actually, because I could see the attacks against me, I could anticipate and begin to study that and gather the data for it. So the data has been there since 2016. It is publicly available. What's ironic is that every time a scandal breaks, and I'll go to Cambridge Analytica in, I believe it's April of 2018, right? When the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, Facebook shut down the public APIs because they said they were protecting your privacy, but all that did was to prevent anyone else from studying the publicly available data that's there. Right. And then they also said, instead of promoting news, we're going to focus on friends and family. Guess where disinformation spreads, folks? Friends and family. Right. So, anyway, let me shut up now.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, some of the attacks against you have been, frankly, gross, and it's either highly sexualized. We see this we see this all across Asia, which is what I'm familiar with. And I mean, I know you a little bit and can see, well, you have ways of dealing with this, but I wonder about your staff sometimes. I mean, does it must rattle some people and create, a lot of issues, because it certainly rattles, people who we work with. And it's partly that the attacks are so grotesque, but also the fear that it's going to bleed over into the real world. And that we've seen that happen as well.
Yeah, yeah. So in August of 2016, we saw that our community on Facebook were getting attacked. And we naively began a hashtag no place for hate campaign, because I didn't realize that it was an influence operation, that it was an information operation. When that happened, when we did that, then they began a hashtag unfollow Rappler. And this was spurred partly because we exposed them, and they were able to convince or to take out 1% of our followers, 52,000 accounts. It plays with the algorithms. Facebook is aware of this, and that's part of the reason I really want to hold them to account along with others. But anyway, so let me respond to what you said. So when we did the hashtag no place for hate, our social media team, predominantly women, our reporters, predominantly women, also came under attack. I'm old. I'm 57 this year. I'm going to turn 58. Holy cow. So don't tell anyone. I'm old, right? I mean, but my young reporters, I'm far more defensive for them, because our palace reporter, Pia Renada, who is in the film 1,000 Cuts, right? She had just turned 26 when President Duterte bullied her, and she was getting clobbered on social media, and they were tearing her apart in the same way. Not, I guess they really focused on me because I think they felt that if they could take me down, if they could silence me, then that will take care of a lot of other journalists. There we go. We're still here. But what we did by October is to offer counseling to all of our folks, anyone who felt targeted, who, in fact, our entire social media team. But we first gave them, personal. But the other thing we did is a general assembly right off the top to explain, to make us. It's kind of like your own little support. Well, we formed our own support group, right? Because at that point, it was so new that even our counselors, the people we sent our team to, didn't understand exponential hate, right? So we actually then had to go to DART to come in, and they were just discovering this. And then they came in to train the trainers. This is a new weapon. And so, look, I will say my coping mechanism is I've been around for a long time. I feel like I spent my entire career going to the gym for this moment. This is the marathon. And so sometimes I don't understand as much, these are mental health issues compounded by the lockdown of COVID. But I will say Rappler was better poised for it because we were prepared to work from home. We already had instances like that. But dealing with fear means that our managers spend a lot more time. I actually created clusters in our organization, so roughly 100 people. We have a buddy system, and then a cluster, and then beyond that, our HR, and then beyond that, I'm like a chat away. Our folks know we have a lot to do, and I hope we're good, I guess. But you have to put in place systems for it. And I joke a lot about how terrorist networks work by cell. Well, I learned something from studying them. We work by cells as well. So there's something that is very each cell, if aligned, is very empowering, because if it's that whole thing of coming bottom up. I hope, at least in the organization that we built, that our messenger will make the same decision I will, because our communications are that strong.
Here's a hot button question for you. Do you consider yourself a member of the, quote, Western world, unquote?
Yeah, I was educated. Yeah, yes and no, right? Like I'm a boundary spanner. And I have been through most of my career because I spent 20 years, actually 18 and a half years with CNN. And I opened the Manila Bureau. I opened the Jakarta Bureau. Decided to spend my life in Southeast Asia. That's how I grew as a reporter, how I learned breaking news. I could get parachuted in, like I'd get a 2 a.m. call and go to Pakistan, and I would go and land and do live shots. So I felt like a lot of that career was taking what was happening in our countries and translating it for the West so that you care and understand it. So 9/11, for example, I was in Jakarta when the 9/11 attacks happened. That was morning your time. I was on a treadmill at night. And by the time the second plane hit, that was a memory for me. And I went back to my closet to look for these intelligence documents from the Philippines in 1995, right? We are weirdly connected. And the biggest stories of my career entail the attacks against you starting in my countries, like the 9/11 attacks. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, my first book, Seeds of Terror, is about the Al-Qaeda network and how it spun off. It took homegrown groups in each of the countries and radicalized them and gave them a global agenda. Does that sound familiar? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the architect of 9/11, had a girlfriend, lived in the Philippines in 1994, had a Filipina girlfriend. They tested going through airport security, the shoe bomber, Richard Reed. That was done in 1994 in the Philippines on a Philippine Airlines flight. A liquid bomb was exploded and one Japanese man was killed, right? And now this one, the attack on our brains, on our emotions. Welcome to the Philippines,
Yeah, I think we're just about out of time, but I think the question, was also, well, let me read you this. The same writer asked a separate question, which is, how do you prevent interference from Western countries in the internal affairs of the Philippines in the name of press freedom or any other kinds of freedom from evolving into a form of imperialism?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's fascinating and loaded because depends on who you talk to, right? Look, the Philippines is a former American colony. I believe the only one. But over time, look at the political correctness of that. What I should be telling you is we were a protectorate, but we were a colony of the United States, right? So words matter, right? And that's so fascinating because I watched that evolution in my career, right? I used to, when I was with CNN, say the former colony of the United States, and then now I see it shifted to a protectorate. And I think that's partly Americans. That's your spin. So sorry. I guess the way I put it together is that history is history. We learn from history, but it's easier to put it in micro terms, right? If you're an abused child, colonizers are never great, but if you're an abused child, at some point, if you don't take responsibility for your present and future, you are not going to grow. And I guess that's the way I think about affairs of nations. I don't think, blaming someone, that's a tactic of demagogues. And I have spent my career in Southeast Asia focusing on leaders, realizing that the weaknesses of our leaders become the weaknesses of the nation. And that's the same for a country, for a company, for any club you join, right? And the institutions are the ones that need to come through. So let me directly answer your question. In my case, I think the reason why I can still speak is because I stand up for values that are in the Philippine Constitution, which is derived from the US Constitution. So just that history alone will show you how the role and history that America has played here. The fact that I speak English, the fact that I think in English. These are realities. But again, the reason I'm probably out of jail is because because the world is watching and because geopolitical power play matters. Let me take it out of me because I'm uncomfortable with it. Let me talk about someone like Jason Rezaian, who was jailed in Iran for 544 days. The reason I know is because he gave me a copy of the book, right? But also it was with Jason Rezaian and Mohammed Fahmy, a Canadian. So Jason Rezaian is Iranian American. Mohammed Fahmy is Canadian Egyptian. The first time I really confronted the possibility I could go to jail was when I was in a panel with them to launch Trial Watch for the Clooney Foundation. And Mohammed Fahmy, his lawyers, Amal Clooney, I think that if they weren't hyphenated, it would have been far more difficult for them to get their freedoms. Jason was a football between Iran and the United States, right? These are realities. Like I told you, I've been around a long time, you know? So I think you cannot distill it as, well, like interference. Gosh, you know, when you step in and there's an abusive a situation in the family next door, are you interfering or are you protecting the wife or the child? All depends, right? I tend to look at history. I love this book by Barbara Tuchman, The March of Folly. I want to learn from history, but I'm not going to use history as an excuse not to do better.
Courtney, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think that sounds like an excellent and inspiring place to stop. Thank you so much, Maria. I got both goosebumps and tears at a certain point during your answer. So thank you so much for the incredible, really incredible, inspiring work that you do. I don't know if you've seen in the Q&A, but there's some, not questions, just statements that are saying as much. So I know you've struck a chord. And Steven, thank you so much for so ably moderating and knowing these issues and the work that you do as well. Really, really incredible work that everyone is doing. So thank you. You know, I hark back to what you said at the beginning when you were talking about impunity. We just had David Miliband on last week, and that's very much what he's talking about now, is just this complete and total lack of accountability. And earlier we had a conversation with the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists as well, and they're saying this, you know, they've elevated disinformation because we can't tackle problems, whether it's nuclear proliferation or climate change, in an ecosystem that is just so distorted. So the work that you're doing is phenomenal. So thank you. With that, I will end it. And, you know, huge thanks to you all. Thanks for the wonderful questions, everyone. ICWA, it's always a pleasure to partner with you. So thank you. And good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much.